Dr. Tom Roselle live right now, 630 WMAL.
Welcome to Dr. Tom Roselle Live. This is Dr. Tom Roselle. I am live in studio on this absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous day outside. Get outside, go for a walk, have some fun, and give me a call at 888-630-9625. That's 888-630-WMAL. Love to talk to you on any subject you have in mind. Perhaps you've had a problem and you've tried, you've applied, you've come up with the same old, absolutely nothing. Well, I think we can put a little shift in that for you today, something that might actually work for you without drugs, without surgery. And to help me do that, I have a very dear colleague, somebody who is extremely knowledgeable, and we're going to be talking about neurological stress. And I'd like to welcome Dr. Harlan Browning. Good afternoon.
Tom, it's always good to be here.
I know, it's fun.
And it's been a little bit of time, so it's about due.
It is. Well, you hide well, so, trying to find you sometimes, you're skiing, you're on the slopes, somebody's smart enough to actually take a vacation once in a while.
Yes, I have to.
I know. I wish I had that same motivation. However, it looks like motivation is going to catch up to me. But we're going to talk about neurological symptoms due to stress today, or neurological stress, and all those things that can cause everything from low back pain to fibromyalgia to intestinal problems, Alzheimer's disease, stroke, palsy, and the list goes on. So I guess what we need to do is position this properly, because you're going to be our presenter in that in-house continuing education program this Wednesday evening, the 23rd of March at 7:30 p.m., and you're going to be talking about neurological stress, and we would like to invite our listeners that if you have any of the problems or other things that you'd like to really get rid of when it comes to what we're talking about, from headaches to MS to neuralgias to neuritises to functional syndromes within your body, there's nobody that I would rather listen to about these subjects than Dr. Browning. And give us a call at 703-698-7117. That's 703-698-7117. Tell my staff that you'd like to attend. As always, our in-house programs are a courtesy to you. They're a gift. But we do require a reservation, so please call the office and tell them that you'd like to be there. Having said that, let's start with this, okay? Neurological stress. What is that?
Well, I want to back up a little bit.
Okay.
We do lots of in-house lectures, and certainly we go out in the community and do a lot of lectures too. So when you asked me what I wanted to do for this one, I really had to kind of look at the big picture, because I've done so many lectures and I just didn't want to rehash the same thing over and over again. So I thought to myself, if I was sitting in the audience, what would I like to hear? And I want to know more about stress, because I talk about it all the time, but specifically I want to know what stress does internally to us. So I'm going to put together this presentation. We're going to talk about how it affects our cardiovascular system. It's going to affect our metabolic system, our immune system, our structural system, our brain. We're going to look at a lot of different things, and we're going to really, hopefully by the end, come up with some solutions on how to handle stress and certainly break some of these cycles.
So the stress pattern that you're talking about relative to this lecture and how it affects the body has to do with the emotional piece, or the stress, or are we going to talk about also the injury patterns and the chemistry and so forth?
We're going to talk about the triangle.
We're talking about the triad.
Sir, we're talking about the triangle, because in my opinion, first and foremost, if there's a pain pattern in position, in other words, a person has some sort of discomfort, that's going to override the other sides of the triangle, the chemical and the emotional. So we can't ignore the fact that there's so many people who are in pain who are chronically in a state of stress, regardless of the fact that they might not know it.
And then ultimately the straw that breaks the camel's back, and they come up with a symptom or one of the things that I lightly touched upon, and they don't know where it came from.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay, so let's go from there. Take us through the pattern. Tell us what happens, from a structural, chemical, emotional piece, how it affects the body, and ultimately what happens.
Well, when we're under stress, and we'll look at the structural side, if we have damaged tissue, and that could be our muscles, our skin, our bones, or our discs in our back, then we set up an inflammatory response, which is a normal piece of the puzzle. But if that inflammatory response stays in place for too long, then we perpetuate the issue and we develop more chronicity, which means that we are in pain all the time. The way that our body deals with being in pain is by upregulating or increasing the activity of part of our nervous system called the sympathetic nervous system, or the fight or flight mechanism. And the whole reason behind this system is to help us adapt to times of more stress or strain, meaning that we need to do things immediately. Well, we produce hormones to do that, one of them being cortisol and one of them being adrenaline.
Everybody knows that is a stress hormone.
Correct.
Right.
And these hormones, besides making us run faster or get away from a bear or, all those things that the caveman originally needed that for, affects other systems in the body. So really I want to look closely at how those elevated levels of cortisol and adrenaline start to break down normal day-to-day operations in the form of our immunity and our cardiovascular system, our bones, our muscles, and all those things.
So we're talking about fight-flight syndromes, and as it relates to structural, chemical, emotional stress pathways,
right,
and ultimately the downstream dysregulation, if you will,
right,
and how things begin to break down.
Yes, and then we're going to add on to that on how we can throw gasoline on the fire on the chemical side. In other words, how our diet can perpetuate this cascade of inflammation and stress hormones. So we got to pull it all together if we're going to really get things straightened out.
Well, it's like the guy that's working in the corporation, whether it's SAIC, ExxonMobil, or whatever the major corps, and they're going up the corporate ladders, and he gets into a fight with his boss before he leaves, so he's emotionally strung out all week long because he's been under deadlines. He's eating garbage. He's grabbing a candy bar, a bag of chips, a Coke. And now, to blow off some steam, Saturday he goes out and he plays some pickup soccer, and he twists his ankle. Now, instead of just a minor strain injury, he has huge damage that's affecting his entire system because of the cascade of events that took place up until that point.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we look at. We look at that cascade because we realize that the longer we're in that fight or flight mechanism, the more things start to break down, and that includes our connective tissue, because cortisol is an anti-inflammatory, which is good on the short term, but if we produce it at a little bit higher levels than normal over long periods of time, our ligaments start to get a little bit lax or looser, which makes us more prone to that tweaking of the ankle or blowing that back out when we pick something up in the garage.
Yeah, something that you normally should be able to do suddenly buries you.
Yes.
Where you get into an exercise program and you say, well, this is good for me, and I'm not doing anything really hard, I'm just going easy, and all of a sudden the stack of cards falls.
Yeah, and usually it compounds itself. So what begins as a bad knee, now all of a sudden the shoulder starts bothering us and other parts of the body. So we see these folks develop a lot of global pain.
888-630-9625. That's 888-630-WMAL. My guest, Dr. Harlan Browning. Your guest, actually, you will be his guest. He will be your presenter this Wednesday evening at the Roselle Center for Healing. If you'd like to attend, and I encourage you to do so because you will get tremendous insight from a very, very bright guy. 703-698-7117. That's 703-698-7117. Tell my staff that you'd like to attend. And as always, you must register, but there's no charge for the presentation. We'd like to have you there as our guest. So let's get into this a little bit. Let's go through what actually happens and how the pain patterns take place and so forth. We've got people here who, are suffering. They have pain. They have headaches. They hurt. They can't move well. And apparently, from their viewpoint, they don't know how it happened.
Well, a lot of times you don't know why it happened because we're meant to be able to handle stress, but at a certain break-even point, we're going to see the signs and symptoms. We want to look at it from multiple levels. The first thing that I think it's important for people to understand is when we have normal body chemistry that becomes altered because we're under stress, then we start to change the rules of the game. And unfortunately, the new rules are not conducive for us to be healthy. So we see subtle things over time. The person will start to put on weight regardless of the fact that they go to the gym around the clock and they have minimal calories in their diet. They'll see their sleep patterns slowly shift. In other words, they become more of a night owl and they'll be chronically tired, even though they're getting to bed early. We might see their GI tract become unstable, irritable bowel type symptoms. So we can pinpoint all these different areas of the body that start to fail, but in reality, it's one common denominator.
There's a great book actually that encompasses so much of what we're talking about. A good friend of both of ours, and one of the doctors in our profession I love dearly, Dr. Evan Mladenoff, wrote a book called "Stressed Out, Headed for Burnout" many years ago because it was based on what happened to him. He ended up so totally ragged and fatigued. They found him in a closet in a fetal position. He had blown all the circuits. And he has, at that point, gone to help so many people from understanding what this paradigm actually is all about. But anyway, stressed out, headed for burnout, you can call our office as well. You can get my book, Ageless Health is a Do-It-Yourself Program, and Dr. Mladenoff's book as well. But anyway, this is part and parcel of what we're talking about. Let's talk about things that people can put their hands on. Let's take a condition and let's walk through it. Let's just talk about just kind of global pain, structural pain.
Okay. When a person has global pain, then we're going to go ahead and assume that they have global inflammation. And this inflammation is usually propagated because of the digestive tract being not as stable as it should be. And this can certainly be in place despite the fact the person doesn't have digestive type complaints. When we're under lots of stress, we produce that cortisol, and that cortisol over time makes our digestive tract become ulcerated and become less competent as far as helping us absorb things and certainly keeping things out of our bloodstream that shouldn't get in there. We see allergy responses start, and these allergy responses ultimately end in an immune type situation where the body is going to start to attack itself, and very often that ends up being in the joints or in the muscular system. So we want to look at how digestion affects inflammation and how inflammation affects global pain.
So we're talking structural, chemical, emotional, and inflammatory pathways, which is the kind of the theme of so many different topics that we have on the program. But we have these inflammatory levels that get up there. The inflammation all by itself is going to cause pain. The inflammation is going to cause the body's inability to transport and use hormones. And when you don't have enough of certain type of hormones, other systems downregulate. We call it dysregulation. And ultimately, you end up with the symptoms that are associated from that. Thyroid, diabetes.
Correct.
All those other things that go on.
Right, because cortisol, in many respects, is antagonistic against some of our very important restorative hormones, like growth hormone. Growth hormone is produced at nighttime, and that's really what makes us repair and regenerate and have vitality. Well, just so happens cortisol does not allow us to sleep as well as we should, so we don't reach that deep stage of sleep that when we produce the growth hormone. We certainly know now, because of research, that cortisol also starts to change the way our active thyroid hormones work, and that would be T3. Well, what it does is it changes it to something called reverse T3, and reverse T3, in all effect, has no effect on our metabolism or the way our body works. So we see that cortisol not only affects us the way we feel structurally, now it's starting to affect us by the way we feel physiologically in the form of energy.
My guest, Dr. Harlan Browning, your host this Wednesday evening at the Roselle Center for Healing. Dr. Browning is going to be talking about neurological stress. I encourage you to attend. If you have any kind of pain pattern or health condition that just doesn't seem to go away and is getting progressively worse, you really have to understand the implications of stress patterns in the body, from injury, from biochemistry, things you shouldn't, things you need more of that you don't get enough of, and emotional patterns as well, and sometimes all three of them. Give us a call at 703-698-7117. That's 703-698-7117. Tell my staff that you'd like to attend. I'd like to remind you that we do these every other week, and most of them are listed online. You can go to rosellecare.com. That's ROSELLECARE.com, and there's a list of events. Check that out. Also, go to Facebook.com, and you don't have to have a Facebook account. Go into our site, go into rosellecare.com, hit our Facebook icon, and it'll take you into our business Facebook. I blog there several times a week on different subjects, whether it's neurological stress patterns, thyroid problems, things that are happening in Japan right now. It's a source of information. I encourage you to keep up to date on that ongoingly. Health is a do-it-yourself program. That's reality and the title of my new book. This is Dr. Tom Roselle. Health is a do-it-yourself program is a most understandable introduction to natural health care. My book will take you step by step through why the body breaks down and gets sick, but also how it repairs itself. You will finally understand the often confusing world of natural care. Order it today by going to Amazon.com or from our website, rosellecare.com. That's rosellecare.com.